Welcome to Being Human. This week, I'm delighted to have as our guest Scott Ambler. He's the Chief Scientist at Disciplined Agile. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
No, it's very exciting to have you here to speak to you in person. I first became familiar with your work way back when I was learning to code in object-oriented languages, C++ and Java, and some of your early work then was of a great help to me at the start of my career. I've since moved away from being a developer, but I am very interested in how we pull teams together, how do we have teams working at their best, and of course the Agile conversation is a big part of that, and so that brought me to Disciplined Agile. So delighted again to find your work, but now in a slightly different context.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've read the book. So I've read the Choose Your Wow, which is which seems to be sort of serves as the manual, right, for Disciplined Agile. And I thought I might start with one of the things you mentioned early on in the book about this idea that it's perhaps an antidote to process populism. Do you want to sort of talk about that a little bit? You know, what is it a response to?
Yeah, definitely. So what we see in practice is a lot of organizations, a lot of teams are struggling to adopt Agile, or at least to get the benefits of Agile. So they'll often adopt Scrum or Safe or Less, and those are all great methods or frameworks. But the problem is that they solve a certain problem. And if you've got that problem, then might be a good solution for you. If you don't have that problem, then obviously it's not that good of a solution. But so there's that. But even if so, let's assume though you've adopted the right method or the right framework to address whatever issues you have. At some point, you address those issues. You solve the problem that method that framework solves. So then what do you do? You've gone up a level. Let's assume everything's gone well and you've improved your process and things are going well for you. So you've solved the problem that method addresses, but now you're stuck. You've got no advice for how to proceed and how to continue to improve. And so what we talk about in the book is something called guided continuous improvement. So we help you to understand how to do a Kaizen Loop, how to do continuous improvement effectively. So instead of just throwing you to the wolves, we say and tell you, oh yes, you can do anything you want, you can improve, you're smart, you can figure it out, which is all true. You can figure it out, and you are smart, and all those good things. But that's expensive and slow, and it takes a long time. So instead, why don't we leverage the learnings of others and actually get a step up? And this is exactly what we're doing in Disciplined Agile. We're helping provide some advice for you in a very lightweight manner to basically reuse the learnings of others. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You do not have to spend all this time figuring out things that other people have already figured out. So instead, you can identify the techniques that are likely to work in your situation, and then experiment with them, see how well they work, and then adopt the good stuff and avoid the bad stuff. So we're basically helping you to speed up your overall process improvement.
Okay. And you mentioned the term Kaizen Loop there. So for listeners who may be not familiar with that term, should we explore that a little bit? What do you mean by a Kaizen Loop?
Yeah, definitely. So a Kaizen or Kaizen Loop is
Kaizen,
yeah. So it doesn't matter. Yeah.
You say tomato, I say tomato. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. So So the basic idea is you make improvements in small steps. That's what Kaizen's all about. It's this idea that you improve over time in small steps. And this is exactly how all these organizations doing DevOps do it. If you read any of the DevOps case studies, it's all about, their messages are all the same. It's at some point in the distant past, we realized we were in trouble. We realized we needed to get better. If we didn't, we would get wiped out by somebody who was better than us. So they all started going into process improvement mode and organizational improvement mode. And sometimes they thought this was a short-term project. Let's do some 6-month improvement and get it over with, or at least over fairly quickly. But then they all discovered that it's not about a short project, that it's really a journey. And so you do these transformations and you become a learning organization. and then you improve over time. So then now they've been improving for 10, 15 years, whatever their story is. And here they are doing these really awesome things that you might not even be able to comprehend. And it's just business as usual for them. And they have no problem sharing the journey with you because they know it's going to take you a long time to do the hard work of doing this improvement. So and if they do that through Kaizen loops, it's all about make a small improvement. Let's come up with let's identify something that might work for us to improve our situation, experiment with it, and then see how well it works. And then keep the things that work well, abandon the things that don't work so well. So that's a and then just rinse and repeat. So that's a Kaizen loop. And where we come in with Disciplined Agile is that very first step where well, I guess the first step is you recognize you've got an issue that you need to address. The second step is, well, let's identify a potential solution. And we can help you up your game by providing you with advice for, well, here's a bunch of choices. Here are the trade-offs associated with those choices. Here's like considerations when this strategy works well, when the strategy does not work so well. So then knowing your situation, can make a better choice now as to what strategy, what technique or practice might work well for you. So then the strategies that you choose to experiment with in your situation, you've got a much better chance of that experiment going well now. So we can speed up the improvement loop. You still need to do the hard work. Like you're never going to get away from figuring things out and learning the technique and adopting it and going through all the cultural change and all the skills adoption that you need. You'll never get rid of that. But what you can do is with a little bit of guidance, you can speed things up. And you can maybe instead of having a 60-40 split of success versus failed experiments, maybe you can get up to 70-30 or even 80-20. And just by making better decisions at the very beginning through the application of the toolkit.
Right. And so what you do is you help by providing a set of choices, right? And then it's up to the individual to make the choice. How do you provide some guidance in terms of which choice to make, right? And I suppose there's that, and there's also what is retained in terms of creative thinking for that individual or that organization in that process.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's where the secret sauce is, I guess. So the first thing we do, so instead of prescribing, so all the frameworks and methods, they basically prescribe, here's a collection of what we think are best practices. And, if you just do this, then everything will work out fine. We don't do that. And instead, what we do in Disciplined Agile is we say, here are the issues you need to think about. So, for example, you need to explore scope. And when you're exploring scope, you need to think through things like, well, how are people going to use this solution? What requirements do we have for the user interface? What quality of service requirements do we have? Do we need to capture any details? And if so, how much? How are we going to go about managing changing requirements later on in the life cycle? Because that will drive other decisions. So we work through, say, here's these decisions that you're making. At least implicitly, you're making these decisions. And then our advice is, well, let's be aware of what we're actually working through and explicitly think about these things. And then for each of these decisions, as for example, how do we go about exploring usage? Well, here's a bunch of options. Epics and user stories and use cases and scenarios and personas and many others. And we say, here are the trade-offs. Here are when each of these techniques may or may not work. So then the creative part is now like I don't know what your situation is. I can't read your mind. And I can't tell you this is the best practice. Like, if anybody tells you, I have a best practice, they're lying. It's not, because any practice works well in some situations and doesn't work so well in others. So because I don't know your situation and you do, what I can do with Disciplined Agile is I can help you make better decisions. I can help give you options and help you make better decisions. But you know your situation. I don't. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are. I don't. So I can help you give you some options and also make you aware that there are options like that. Sadly, that's a big part of the overall toolkit is we first of all let you know that there are options. Because if you've only ever heard about, Scrum or SAFe or whatever, then you might not even know that you won't know the wealth of options that are out there. But you still need to decide. You still need to run the experiment. So And just because something sounds like it might work for you doesn't mean it actually will. You still need to try it out. Like, this is where the Kaizen Loop comes in, right? So we can just help you make a better decision, but you still need to make a decision, and you still need to try it out and find what works for you and what doesn't work for you in your situation. And then, act accordingly. So it's still, and then you're still putting everything together on your own. So, there's basically effectively an infinite number of combinations of how people can choose their wow. And of course, evolve it over time, because your skills will change, your situation will change. So you will evolve your way of working your wow as you learn and as you get better. And that's what Kaizen's all about. And that's what these, like I said, that's what these DevOps case studies all talk. Awesome. And it's interesting to know, as far as I can tell, like, if you list all the companies that you admire and that that you would be afraid to compete against if you had to, it's interesting to me that they're mostly talking about Kaizen. We got to this great point to being awesome by through these Kaizen loops and by basically by bootstrapping. Very, very rarely do you hear, "Oh, we adopted this framework or we adopted this method, and that's why we're totally awesome, and you're totally scared of us now because we're so great." It's known. It's always, yeah, we experiment, we figured it out, and we figured out how we were going to work. So I would say, and in all these organizations that are adopting these frameworks, nobody really seems to be scared of them. They might be your competitors, and they might be a little ahead of you, and might be getting some benefit from the organizations like Amazon or Google or others. So I think this is something that's very, very important to choose to observe. The organizations that are really truly competitive, they're the ones doing these Kaizen Loop, and this strategy has been around for decades. So it's well proven. So that I would,
and it stands to reason that the only way I can develop competitive advantages is if I develop something uniquely that nobody else has, and I have to do that through my own process, my own thought process. But that brings back to this term, which I love, this idea of process populism. So, and I think of it like a kind of reductive answer to a generalized anxiety. And I think that anxiety, and I think what you're pointing to is a sort of anxiety around, we need to go agile, but we don't know how. And somebody comes along and says, well, here's how. Yeah. So how, when you come along and you say, well, we're not really going to tell you how, we're going to kind of give you some options, how do you deal with the fact that that person might be anxious and how it might feel more appealing to them to take a framework or a more prescriptive answer?
Well, yeah. So a lot of people look for an easy answer, right? They're always, just give me the magic diet pill. Give me just tell me the 7 easy steps to become agile, right? They're always looking for, and there isn't. So part of the first answer is, part of the answer is to recognize that you're going to have to do the hard work. Now, the methods and frameworks do help. Like, if you look at the industry stats, there are, because they solve a problem, right? So if you happen to have that problem, that might be a solution for you, right? Assuming you can pull it off. So let's assume you can pull it off, but then it only gets you so far. And so our approach is, well, and a lot of organizations have done this. Like, a lot of organizations have adopted Scrum or SAFe or whatever. Whether it made sense to do so or not doesn't really matter. They've done it. So here's where they are. So our approach is, we like to say, you go to war with the army that you got. You go to war with the organization that you've got. So we go in and we take more of a lean approach, and we say, okay, this is what it is. Let's start improving it. Let's start making changes. Now, sometimes you can make some pretty big changes and it's a bit rough, but you're much better off to make slow changes over time. So, so the organizations that we work in, sometimes there's just some blatant dysfunction that we need to address this. You're not gonna solve, you're not really gonna move forward until you actively go after this big problem here. But then most of the time, the people, these organizations, are in fact doing reasonably well. There's some, there's clearly a few, usually a few cultural challenges, but they've got the skills to at least get something done. So we can start, we can work with that and start getting, start improving and start getting better. And we just want to speed it up. But a lot of it too is, we need to, like, we have these discussions all the time with the customers that we work with, and so we help them understand, and it's in a very lightweight manner, these what we call process goal diagrams, which are for the most part decision tree, decision trees on steroids, basically. And so we have this very lightweight and easy to understand strategy. But the problem, you need a little bit of training to understand. You need to get the basics and understand that. And we often get pushback, a little bit of pushback is, this is so complicated. And I'm just looking for an easy answer. And my response, okay, I appreciate you're looking for an easy answer. But what would you take away? I was actually working with some people just last week on this. And this is always my response. When everybody says it's too complicated, okay, fine. What would you take away? What don't you do here? And he said, well, we don't do that. Really? Somebody doesn't do that? Or is it you don't do that? Oh, well, I don't do that. But yeah, those people over there do that. Okay, so is that important stuff? I said, well, it is, but I just don't do it. Okay, well, fine. But it's being done. So let's understand that, let's first of all observe that this stuff is actually happening, and let's try to optimize it, right? Let's try to make it better. Let's try to improve things. And usually, and the really strange thing is what happens is, like 5 minutes after this, oh, this is too complicated discussion, it becomes maybe you're missing this and this. Oh, okay, so now it's not complicated enough for you, right? So we totally change the conversation completely changes. So I think a big issue in the industry, and this is completely human nature, is we're always looking for easy answers, and there aren't any. This is particularly software development, let alone other aspects of organization, are complex. They're complex endeavors, and this is why because if it was simple, it would get automated away. You'd be out of a job. So you haven't been automated out of a job yet. So it tells me there's some complexity here, and you might want to embrace that complexity and do what you can to improve it and make it simpler. But we need to understand that fundamentally the reason why humans are still involved is the fact that it's complicated enough that a human needs to be involved. So let's be happy actually that we have these that these complexities exist. So in Disciplined Agile, we're holding up the mirror to the complexity that you face. So instead of trying to spin a story for here's how it's simple and here's here's the wonderful 8 steps to take, we say no, you need to think, and you're going to do the work. You need to think. We can certainly streamline things, and we can certainly help you improve the way you think, but you're still going to have to do the hard work, and because there's no easy answers there. And I think so this is so some people appreciate that, some people don't. So it all depends on where you are in your learning journey yourself of actually understanding what your ability to appreciate the situation that you actually face. If you're still looking for an easy answer, then go do Scrum, go do Safe. And then once you start realizing, oh, this is a little harder than you think, then come back to us. So we're seeing a lot of organizations doing that now. And because we have a very coherent message and strategy and technique for here's how we can help you break out of method jail. About a year ago, or last fall, I guess, Ivar Jacobson wrote a wonderful article for ACMQ and about how to break out of about how we're in method prison with all these methods and frameworks, and how do you break out. And it's all about, you got to understand the situation you're in and choose to improve. So the Essence Toolkit also has a reasonably pretty good strategy as well for doing the same. And when we're working together, it's a good partnership.
I like that metaphor actually. So I'm just visualizing your decision tree diagrams, from the book, and they are quite complicated, right? You've got a lot of legs to these diagrams. But it seems that a couple of things are emerging. One is that it is what you are treating is the whole, and you talk about that in the book, right? You treat the whole environment, right? And so if you're going to be true to that, then of course there are a lot of facets that you need to explore, and I think that the diagram represents the reality of that. But it also seems to me like here are several routes out of methods jail. If these are Tom, Dick, and Harry tunnels, if you know The Great Escape, then it's the Tom, Dick, Harry, John, and all the various tunnels that out of this by just answering questions in these domains.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a very good point. We do choose to look at the whole picture, and when you look at the whole picture, because that's what you're actually dealing with, right? You're in your organizations, you're dealing with the whole picture. So just thinking about Disciplined Agile delivery, which is the first of 4 layers of the toolkit, where we're dealing with solution delivery, software development from start to finish, and then all aspects of it. That's a lot of work right there, right? Like, I had to go to school for 4 years to get a computer science degree, and that basically just qualified me to become a novice programmer at the end of the day, right? So there's a reason why we have to go to school for so long to learn, because it's complicated. And so we look at all aspects of, we ask questions like, how do you initiate a team effectively? How do you do construction? How do you do transition? Like, how do you do release into production? And then, of course, and then go back again. And then while you're doing all that, how do you address interacting with your stakeholders? How do you address architecture? How do you address design? How do you do programming and testing and governance and management and all these other things? And you got to get it right, because and it all fits together. And how does this all fit together in a coherent and cohesive whole? And then that's just solution delivery. And so my team, my solution delivery team, we interact with the finance people, the procurement people, the operations people, and the enterprise architects, and many, many others. So how do we do that in an effective, streamlined, lightweight manner? And then when we look at it from the point of view of like the enterprise architects or the governance people, how do we, as an enterprise architect or as a governance person, how do I interact with these agile and lean teams? But as well, I got to keep the lights on. How do I interact with the traditional teams as well, and help them? And then as the organization shifts from being more agile and lean, or being more traditional, and they shift over to being more agile and lean, my group of people need to evolve at that sort of rate. So there's a lot of moving parts here in your organization, and you really can't ignore them. I work with we work with companies on a regular basis, and I think one of the strengths of the toolkit is it reflects the realities of our team going into organizations and actually doing this stuff in practice, and choosing to observe what works well and what doesn't work well, and actually helping companies to adopt these things, and helping teams and individuals to adopt these strategies. And we see a very common problem that we see all the time is that these organizations, they'll focus on the software development team and helping it become agile, which is great. But if they interact with these other groups in the organization, and those other groups are not agile, and sometimes very anti-agile, and maybe even actively trying to sink you, because they are very threatened by agile, because they the agile message is you need to produce value, and if you struggle to do that, you will fight anything that would force you to produce value. So harsh observation, but it's the reality that we face. So the point is that as an agile team, as an agile software team, if my team's interacting with these other teams, then they either need to work at least with us in an agile manner that makes sense. Now that might mean we need to help them become agile and start coaching them and teaching them and good stuff like that, which is fine. Or they need to at least sort of get out of the way and say and let us succeed. Because the last thing you need is like the procurement group or the enterprise architecture group or some other group throwing anchors around your neck just as you're trying to learn how to swim, and somebody comes along. So by the way, here's a 50-pound anchor. Put it around your neck and learn to swim like that, because we refuse, because we're the anchor, and we don't really believe in what you're doing. So here you go. I'm sure you can handle a 50-pound anchor around your neck. And bad things happen at that point. So we need to look at we need to optimize the whole. We need to look at the overall bigger picture and act accordingly. And the big picture is not pretty sometimes.
Right. And complicated.
Very complicated. Yeah. Where our organizations are complex adaptive systems, and we need to understand that. And there's some very significant implications of that. That if you don't accept and then act accordingly with, you'll never succeed. And so complex adaptive system is always evolving, always changing, always learning. So my team will be working with others. We'll be doing whatever we're doing, and we'll interact with other teams to get the job done, and they'll interact with us in similar ways. So we're constantly learning. We're constantly learning from each other, and we're constantly evolving. And the environment that we're in is constantly evolving. Our customers are constantly evolving. So everything is changing and shifting on us. and we need to be effective. We need to work together to be competitive in the marketplace and delight our customers. Because if we don't, somebody else will, and we'll be out of business. And I think this is, and it gets back to these DevOps case studies. They're all very clear about that. They were fearful of being wiped out. Whenever they got on this journey, it was always because they knew they were in trouble, and if they didn't become more competitive and didn't get better, that they'd be out of business. And I think this is something that a lot of organizations are starting to get into now. There's a lot of rhetoric around this, but there's nowhere near as much real action in organizations that I see. There's people talk about it, but then they don't want to do the hard work. It's like I obviously need to lose a few pounds, and it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go on a keto diet any day now, and then years later I'm still haven't gotten started. So that's the thing, right? It's hard work. It's hard work to do these things, and you've got to start, and you've got to keep at it.
Well, that's a fascinating in observation. The possibility that we now may be hitting the point where being agile, becoming agile, is less of a nice to have. It's less of an aspiration for organizations, and is becoming an imperative. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think so. I think like working in an agile manner, being agile or being lean, or combinations thereof, is table stakes. It's not an option. It just isn't. Because if you don't, you're not going to survive. Because agile and lean is all about, let's be smart about the way we work. Let's be adaptive. Let's be collaborative. Let's delight our stakeholders. All these good critical things that will help make us competitive and keep us going. What are your options? What are your options? So you're going to not be competitive? How long do you think you're going to last? So like this I think is the, like, even in government, you need to be effective now these days. We've worked with a few government agencies, and government needs to spend the money wisely. They need to serve the citizens and do so effectively. So this is because there's only so many tax dollars you can get, and I think this is a critical thing to observe. I'd be hard pressed to name an industry where being agile is not table stakes.
Right. And if you're going into organization and you're saying to them, okay, we want you to think, we want you to make your own choices and learn as you go, and you've got a block of people who are wedded to a certain set of processes and are very attached to them. And as you say, if in order to get any kind of movement in the organizations, you've either got to get them out of the way, or you've got to find a way to work with them. How do you start with that group, especially? Because I think it's quite easy to understand how you work with people who are up for the agile journey, right? But what are your sort of learnings and any wisdom you can share about working with those who are most resistant to it?
Yeah, so that's where all the challenges with these transformation efforts. So our go-in position is we want to help you get better. And so even these groups that might not want to change, or simply often it's like they don't have the resources, or maybe they don't realize often they don't realize that they can and need to change. But yeah, our going position is always to help them and to help educate them and discuss what the issues are and ask questions like, so how well do you think this is working? Because these groups often realize that they're what they're doing isn't very effective. They just like what they're doing. Sometimes they like what they're doing, and very often they hate it. They realize that they're not adding value. They realize that that things need to be better, but they often feel disempowered. And they feel that they can't change because of the complexity, because everything is so interconnected, that they feel that they can't, that they're not, either they can't or they don't know how to make these changes. And they often don't realize that small change will start to add up over time. So there's that, and rightfully so. They often have their vision, their preferences is that mean that they might not be aligned with others. There's always that sort of thing going on. So there's a lot of reasons why they're reticent, and they simply might, they might be so overwhelmed. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week just to keep the lights on, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh, by the way, now we need to do all this hard work to become agile," your response is going to be, "Bite me." Like, I got better. I'm barely keeping afloat here, and you're telling me, I've got to do this other stuff too. So I can't blame them. But and frankly, it's easy to say, we need an organizational pass. You need to get out of the way because we're being agile. That message rarely goes well. So like that is like the absolute last resort. Get out of my way has got to be your last option that you try, because people just don't respond well to that, and rightfully so. But at the same time, your organization has to realize there's got to be this understanding within your organization that things need to change and need to get better, and that means we're going to be uncomfortable for a while, probably forever, but certainly for a while. And you're not going to get everything. So this is one of the reasons why we also invite, we promote this idea of optimizing the whole. You got to look at the bigger picture, right? Because if you are very, very narrowly focused, they say you're an enterprise architect and you've got the official enterprise architecture way of working, you might be very happy doing that and be oblivious to the cost and damage that you're causing, because you're only focused on here's all these good things that we're doing. And when you're not looking at the bigger picture, you're not realizing, but for everybody to jump through your hoops in order for you to do your job, it's incredibly slow and expensive. And you're a bottleneck, and you're not adding value. And but they're not measuring that. They don't perceive that. They might believe that it's not their fault because other people, and if only everybody else aligned well with them, things would be fine. There's all these reasons, but at the end of the day, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need to ask, okay, let's look at the whole loop here and ask how well this is working. How does it fit? How is it all fitting in together? And then you start realize, wow, we need to start change. Everybody needs to start changing and starting to move in a better direction. It's going to take time. And then unfortunately, you get in these situations where, well, just tell me the one official way of doing things, tell me the tool. Give me the tool, and we'll just use the tool and we'll be happy. And it's no. We need to figure this out, and we need to get the skills, and we need to experiment, and it's going to take time. Every so often there's some low hanging fruit, but usually but if there's low hanging fruit, these are smart, experienced people. If there's some low hanging fruit, they've probably picked it already. So it's pretty rare that at least easy things are available to do anymore. It's always some very hard. We got 3 or 4 groups of people that really need to align better and need to choose to work better. And part of that message is also you might have to gain new skills and go in a new role. So what do you do with people that are they're happy in their current roles, but the roles are going away? And and the thing with Agile is that there's a lot of great roles that are very, very effective and probably far more interesting than what we see in the traditional world in many cases. But it takes time. It takes a different mindset, and then it takes time to get there. To learn the mindset and to learn the skills that you need. And as an individual, you need help moving into this new role. So and most organizations will help you, but you've got to choose to make this journey yourself, and then do the hard work to do it. And I think and that's hard, because what do you do when you've been a project manager for 30 years and you believe in that and all this stuff. Now we still need project managers, but perhaps not as many. So when you've got far too many people in a given traditional role and you're missing people in an agile role, then it tells me that maybe we should start shifting people over in that other role. And that might mean you need to redefine your career, and you need to redefine what you value and how you perceive yourself in the workplace. And that's very threatening. Some people love it. It's always a range of thoughts on this. And so some people absolutely love this idea that they've got, there's new opportunities they can learn and do these really cool things. And others, it's like, no, I'm very happy. I'm happy in my little box, and I want to continue doing this forever. And it's like, no, that's going away. And or there's not as many roles. I think not as many positions as there used to be for that role. Like that's a hard thing, right? Because if you shift, if you go down from like say 100 positions in a certain thing down to 20, and then those other 80 people have got to go do something else. That's great, but if you don't have usually there's more people aiming for those 20 positions than there like there's far more people than 20 aiming for those 20 positions. So now we're in a Hunger Games situation, right? And then all this dysfunction occurs as people start scrapping it out, trying to aim for these 20 positions, or worse yet, spinning a story for why there really needs to be 80 of them as opposed to 20 of them, and then doing all this make work, and it's crazy. So and this is hard, right? If you're leadership in these organizations, and during this transition, it's not just like we go from 100 shift over time, and we need to keep the lights on when we're doing the shift. So there's a lot of moving parts in these agile and lean transformations, and it's not, and like I said, it's not really a transformation; it's a journey. So all this stuff shifts over time.
Right, and what comes to mind here is the fundamental tenet of lean in terms of the Toyota production system and respect for people. And from certainly my understanding of the Toyota way of working is that when you create efficiencies in a team, there is never a sense that we're now going to fire people. It's always, well, let's take people from here and have them go work to create efficiency somewhere else. And I think there's often that idea. I mean, I saw a report in the British press about the CEO of British Telecom, major telecoms company here, talking about, we're going lean and we're going to be able to release 10% of the workforce. And that made me so angry because it puts this association with lean and job cuts, right? And actually at the heart, I think, of what you're talking about here is we have to go the other way, and we have to actually create a lot of safety around these programs and have people see that there can be a path from where they are today to where the roles might be in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And so for BT, it's absolutely foolish to tell people, oh yeah, we're going lean and we're going to cut 10% of you. That demotivates a few. That's reasonably demotivating. So I would fight that tooth and nail. If it's like, yeah, I'm going to do all this hard work and then get cut. It's I would push back against that. So yeah, and I think the real message has got to be there is a path for you, and this is what we do in our training and in our coaching is we make it very clear not only that there's one path, there's multiple paths. So if I'm a project manager or a business analyst or whatever, there's multiple roles that I could take on in the agile space if I choose to make that journey. So you got to make a choice now, which is, some people don't want, but yeah, there's multiple options, and we want to help you get there. And I think this is, and we want to find ways to help you add more value to the company, become an awesome employee and become more valuable. Certainly this is a good thing. So, but yeah, so you're absolutely right. Like, we definitely lean towards the lean approach of, yeah, let's find, let's help you move into a value adding role and shift your career. What's not to like about that? So yeah, telling people, yeah, we're going to axe, 10, 20% of you. Yeah, that's not going to work
because
out well.
we're going lean.
Because we're going lean. Exactly. Yeah. So then you blame lean. And then, yeah, so everybody blames lean. And worse yet, as soon as you start saying, hey, there's going to be layoffs, you lose all your good people because they abandon ship. Because, why take the risk of being cut when they can, when the grasses might be greener on the other side. So, yeah, I wouldn't be doing that at all. The spin needs to be in the strategy for it's not spin, it's a strategy. The strategy needs to be, we're going to, take our existing workforce and make them more effective and help them become more effective. Like, what's not to like about that? Yeah. And frankly, anybody saying that, if I hear leadership saying, we need to become more lean and cut X% of our staff, very first thing I'm thinking is, well, wait a minute. Why do you need to cut that much? Like, how badly have you managed this firm so far that you need to cut now? What the heck is going on here? Right? Like, why weren't you doing your job earlier? That I think, maybe the press should ask a few questions. about that. But and they won't. But anyways,
no, but it's unfortunate that it gets associated with efficiencies as opposed to creative solutions, thinking for yourself, and having read some of the Kaizen books, there's the real sense of actually this is liberating and it's fun, and you want to experiment with your colleagues about how you can make this process, awesome, and it's the reality of it in terms of my sense of when it's done well is very different to it being about efficiencies, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really weird. Like we've run into situations where, at the beginning of an engagement, there'll be people fighting us tooth and nail, or they'll just fundamentally unhappy with what they're doing. And then 6 months later, they're joyful, or at least they're significantly happier than they used to be. And we've run into people where, like, at the beginning, I've had people come up to me like 6 months, a year later, and say, "Man, I fought you tooth and nail in this, and I thought, I thought the world was going to come to an end because we were doing this, this evil agile stuff." And I said, "Man, my job is way better. I love it here. This is way, I enjoy my job now, and I'm so glad I've moved out of what I was doing, and they're just much happier. And because, like, who doesn't want to add value? And frankly, if you're not adding value, you're constantly at risk of worrying, well, what am I going to do? I might lose my job, and because eventually, because you are at risk. If you're not adding value, you are at risk of being cut, and that's pretty scary. Like, I'm in my early 50s, and what would you do if you're in your early 50s or late, somewhere in your 50s, and then suddenly you get laid off? Wow, that's a scary proposition. So yeah, we got to worry about things like this, and frankly, why wouldn't you want to add value? Why wouldn't you want to enjoy your work, and like love going to the office? Like, why would you want that? And be valuable, be valuable, be seen as being valuable. Then your problem will be, you'll be hoping to retire at some point, and they won't let you go. It's like they'll keep they'll golden handcuff you in, and you'll never get to leave. So yeah, I would rather have that problem.
Right, and of course that's the promise of sort of the setting up teams in these ways, is because they become so rigorous about measuring their impact and their value over time, that the team as a whole, of which I become a part of, becomes hugely valuable if it's staying true to those principles to the rest of the organization. And absolutely, you're right. I become secure by virtue of the fact I'm contributing to this high value add team, as opposed to my box on the org chart, which could be, at risk in the next reel, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. So you want to be on good, solid teams, because even if, like, that line of business starts to go, people, you're going to redirect, like, these healthy functioning teams. You're going to redirect them to do other things, and we see that all the time too, right? Because once you've built a team and it's like this engine of getting stuff done, don't mess with it. And keep them together, and you might point them at different things, but certainly keep these teams together and let them be successful. This is a very good thing. But and all this takes a different mindset. It takes a different leadership mindset. It takes a different mindset for everybody, but certainly a different leadership mindset. And I think this is a challenge, I think, for our current managers. First of all, if you're a manager, we really need to help you shift into leadership, because we really need leader managers, not just managers. Let's
talk about that, actually. Sorry, yeah. So what would you see as the key facets of the leader manager?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it. So somebody who's just a manager tells other people what to do. They plan, they might estimate, they plan, they strategize, and then they believe that they need to tell their staff what to do. And if you have very, low skilled staff, that might be the case. But this is certainly not the case in the software world or in the business world in general. These people are skilled professionals. They know what they're doing. They've got the skills. They have the ability to think for themselves. So they don't need to be told what to do. They need to be led. They need to be guided. Maybe they need to be facilitated. So you might be acting as a facilitator, of planning and stuff like that, and helping people to solve some real hard problems. But you won't be telling them, here's the official way of doing this, and get this done by Friday. We don't. We most professionals don't need that. They need guidance. They need direction. They need they need to be seen, recognized as providing value. They need to be provided with valuable work and meaningful work, things like that. And so this is what our manager leaders need to be doing, is helping to grow these teams and helping to sustain them, and to provide them with the feedback and the resources they need, and the money and the time that they need, and get them to help them gain the skills and the experiences, allow them to experiment, set the environment up to enable these teams to succeed. This is, and then when there's like inner team strife, and there always is, help overcome that, right? So be the glue, or be the grease, maybe the grease is a better way to look at it, to get, all these teams working together. This is what we need. And it's a much different skill than the, spend months or weeks putting together annual budgets and plans, or project plans, and then, keeping them updated as the real work happens. We actually need value. We need leadership and value coming out of our leaders.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, just to pick up on that, because I think this is I find it a lot when I go into organizations, and a major point of tension is the planning budgeting cycle. And you talk in the book about this idea of a rolling wave plan, or rolling wave budgeting. Yeah, how do you manage this tension between this desire to add value in an iterative way, and a need, perhaps in more senior levels of the organizations, for a longer term view on finance and activity?
Yeah, so this is always a huge tension in most organizations, because particularly in publicly traded companies, or basically anybody that needs to report out to the marketplace, because you're in this annual and quarterly reporting environment. So fair enough, you got to stay out of jail and avoid fines and things like that. But we need to distinguish. I hope you want to do that. But anyways, we need to distinguish between reporting and planning and guiding, right? So those can and should be disconnected from each other, because they are very different things. So the planning, when we plan, we need to realize that we are struggle to and we're planning, and the further in time that we try to plan and try to predict, the fuzzier our plans need to be, because stuff happens, right? So the marketplace changes, our competitors do things, our people change, everything happens. So so further in the future, it has to be fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier. So the traditional annual planning that we used to do reflected a slower moving environment. It also reflected lower levels of competition and lower levels of change. This is not our environment anymore. We are in a rapidly changing environment. We will be here forever, more than likely, unless there's some major cataclysm that I think we would all prefer to avoid. So anyways, this is the new norm. So as a result, our planning horizons need to be a lot shorter. So we can and should do detailed planning in a very short horizon, if that's weeks or months, maybe a couple months. But then further out in time has got to be fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier. And then what happens is, as we move forward in time, day by day, we continually update our plan based on our new understanding of this fuzzy future that we face, and our new understanding of what our competition and what is doing right now today, and what our customers are also expecting of us. So we constantly update. So with rolling wave planning, it's all about plan in detail now for the short term, but then in the longer term, it's fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier, and then we just roll into the details over time. So, and this technique's been around for decades. This is it's in the PMBOK. This is a common management technique. We just need to adopt it. And what I find, what's interesting is these organizations that are still doing detailed annual planning, often because they I think in their minds they still connect it to financial reporting. They do all this. They just spend weeks or months sometimes doing this detailed planning. So maybe this summer, so if you're planning on for 2020, you'll see organizations that later this summer or going into the fall, they'll start doing this detailed annual planning, and then for next year, for 2020. And then this time in 2020, they will be madly updating the plan, because they didn't predict what was going on. They got other important things that need to happen. Some things they thought were going to be important really aren't. So they've got all these buckets of money and assigned to various projects that don't make any sense anymore. So now they're pulling money from buckets. So there's all this overhead to recover the detailed to make the detailed plan realistic. So they waste all their time doing this detailed planning, and then they waste all their time fixing the detailed plan. And you got to get off that treadmill. That treadmill has no hope of working these days. So instead, do detailed planning for the short term, which you've actually got a shot at, and do continuous long-term planning at a higher level, and accept that. So planning is so important. You should be doing it constantly. And it's not this annual effort that everybody hates, and then this replanning effort that spends the rest of the invest the rest of the year recovering from. So I think that this is a lot of organizations are either have figured this out or are starting to figure it out, but we still see some organizations that really are struggling with this, and it's a different skill set, it's a different mindset to begin with, and it's a different skill set. And you've got to be used to, you've got to be able to deal with uncertainty, because you are in an uncertain environment. Accept that. That's got to be your very first step. Has to be, we have this volatility, we have this uncertainty in the marketplace. It is what it is, not going away. It's getting worse. Accept that, and then start acting accordingly, because the old style techniques aren't going to get the job done in the new world. And if you don't, up your game on things like this, somebody else will. Your existing competitors will, and get ahead of you, and that'll be problematic for you. Or worse yet, somebody will come in from the outside and disrupt you, and it'll be game over.
Yeah, and the rolling rate budgeting takes presumably the same approach. I mean, you wanted to just do your funds allocation for a short window, and then leave the rest of it fairly fuzzy. Or exactly. The longer term view fuzzy, should I say?
Yeah, exactly. And there's like bodies of knowledge out there, like the beyond budgeting stuff, and that goes way beyond movement. Has very clear, and 500 companies or Fortune 100 company. So it has a long history of working well. So it's just, so I like to compare it to allowance. Like anybody with kids, do you give your kid an annual allowance? Here's January 1st, like $1,000. Here you go, teenage son. Go and spend this as however you think, and spread that money out over the year and spend it wisely. Heck no. You every week maybe you give the kid allowance, and you keep an eye on how they're spending it. And so they spend it well. If they're going out and buying books, I might give the kid more money. If they're going out and buying cigarettes, oh no, I don't think so. So, you keep an eye on it, right? So the budget changes over time. And, if suddenly I was out of work, well, okay, now, sorry, kid, you're not getting allowance because dad doesn't have any money. So you act accordingly, and you actually manage, you manage your own budget. And, it's because it's not really about the hitting an estimate. It really should be about how do we spend the money wisely, and how do we get the best value out of our investment. And that requires you to first of all think about how you're spending it, and then to keep an eye on how it actually is being spent, and then adjust. Right? We constantly have to adjust what we're doing. We can't just predict. And frankly, if you think you can predict the future, you should play the lottery. What are you doing working? Pick those right 6 numbers between 1 and 49 and retire. What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? It's we've got to, that's the way we got to start looking at the future, I think. Right. The future is unpredictable, so stop trying to predict it. Just stop.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that metaphor. That's a brilliant one. I'm sure I'll use that. The other detail I'd like to focus in on, because I also see it as a major tension in the companies certainly that I work with, is this, and you've touched on it a few times in this interview, but this tension between the enterprise architect and the teams, perhaps. And you have this role in Disciplined Agile delivery of the architecture owner. So could you describe a little bit about how that role works, and then, more broadly, how you manage this tension between the sort of enterprise level architecture and what teams are doing?
Yeah, definitely. So the architecture owner role reflects the fact that architecture is important, and that we are dealing with architectural issues and making design decisions and stuff like that. So the architecture owner is a leader. They guide, they facilitate the team through making these architecture and design issues. They should also have a handle on the technical roadmap, the architecture roadmap for the organization, the business architecture roadmap for the organization, and understand what the standards and guidelines are, or at least know who to go talk to about that, and bring that knowledge into the team. They should also be mentoring the team members and helping them, bring them up in these higher level, longer term thinking type things. Yet still, the architecture owner is still a team member. They're still coding. They're still doing something else, because there's usually not 8 hours a day of architecture work to be done. So the architecture owner will, in large organizations at least, will work closely with the enterprise architects, because the enterprise architects, they'll be responsible for the long-term vision of the organization. They will be identifying, what our roadmap is, where we're going, what we're moving away from, what types of experiments should we start thinking about, what technologies we definitely want to avoid, what technologies that we might want to go towards we need to experiment with first. So they've got a handle on things like this. Now, my architecture owner might be an enterprise architect. So, particularly in like, small to medium-sized organizations, that'll be the case, because, you've only got so many people. Or in organizations where, in situations where my team is working on some mission critical thing for the organization, we certainly might want to have a heavy hitter on the team to help us out with this enterprise architecture stuff. But either way, my architecture owner is collaborating in some way with the enterprise, architects, and may be one. So the idea is we're getting this long-term vision into the team, and we're making sure the team aligns with the direction the company's going in. And as well, we're also bringing the realities of what we see on the ground up to the enterprise architect. So this is why we have this close collaboration. The enterprise architects are learning from us. We're learning from them. It's all working out well. And we see the same sort of pattern on the product owner side as well, with product management. But if you have something like that in your company. So anyway, so we want the enterprise architects have this long-term vision. I hope they're experienced. Now, the larger the organization, you'll get larger and larger enterprise architecture groups, and there might be a hierarchy or a network, however it is you organize those people. But they should certainly be actively involved with supporting the teams, and maybe even working on the teams in some cases, as I said, as well as working with the senior executives to understand the overall corporate vision and stuff like that. So there's a lot of moving parts there, but certainly the enterprise architecture effort is critical to your success, as is and the architecture owner brings that sort of knowledge, that sort of vision and skills into the team, and shares that vision with the team members. So one thing that's different about Disciplined Agile delivery, the solution delivery portion of the toolkit, is that we have three leadership roles on teams. The team lead. So if you're familiar with Scrum Master, it's sort of like Scrum Master, but just with a little more to it. The product owner, if you choose to go that route, so very similar to what Scrum talks about. And then the architecture owner, which is actually out of Agile modeling. So we have a management-y people type of leader. We have a requirements, what to do type of leader, and we have a technical how to do type of a leader. And between the three of them, they're the leadership triumvirate on the team, and they bring in this tension between the leadership issues that we're dealing with on the team, and hopefully thinking long term. So it's because in Disciplined Agile, we deal with the entire range of issues. It's not just the management requirements management stuff you see in Scrum. It's how do you make all of this stuff work? And when you're looking at the big picture, architecture is part of that big picture.
Right. And so just sort of thinking about the situation that I became aware of in a particular organization recently, is that there's a big frustration with the solution architect in the team, the solution architect together with the engineering lead in this team, are constantly needing to go up to the enterprise architect to get approval on their design decisions, and they're waiting forever. And their beef is that these enterprise architects don't have any accountability for the delivery on these teams, but yet their action or inaction is having a material impact on the delivery of this team, for which the engineering lead and the solution architect are accountable. And so this is as you can imagine, a considerable source of tension. Have you encountered that kind of dynamic, and how do you then address it?
Yeah, we sadly, yes. We see these. This is a fairly common thing, unfortunately, and it's because the enterprise architects haven't become agile yet. Now, and there's could be very good reasons. Maybe they just haven't had the time. Maybe they're desperately understaffed, and they're doing the best they can, right? So, and that's the assumption I would go in. They're doing the best they can. Let's find out what's going on. So my response to that would, sort of what we were getting at earlier, would be, well, how can I help you become more agile? How can we, coach and mentor the enterprise architects, at least the ones we're dealing with, become more agile and to work in a more agile manner, which means they're more responsive, which is another reason why if my architecture owner is an enterprise architect, then a lot of this stuff is already being dealt with, right? Because they spend most of their time on my team doing whatever we need to do, and then they interact with the enterprise architects to smooth over the relationship. Now, if they're not a member of the enterprise architecture team, we should at least be working well, maybe they should be, but we should at least be working closely in a collaborative manner. So the enterprise and we should be the enterprise architect should be empowering my architecture owner to make the decisions we need to make. Now, if that means they need to be somehow coached and trained on the overall architecture roadmap and strategy, so be it. Right? And this is why we want this close collaboration at all times between the enterprise architects and the architecture owners, is because they're, part of that collaboration is the architecture owner coming up to speed on the evolving roadmap and the evolving vision for enterprise architecture. So we need this all going on. Or, like I said earlier, if the enterprise architects don't want to step up and become more agile, then maybe they should be asked to get out of the way. And that means the leadership in your organization, this is part of their jobs, right? To smooth over these tensions between teams. So if your team has a tension with the enterprise architects, either the team should work it out on their own, or one of the adults, one of the leaders, the organizational leaders, should step in and say, okay, enough is enough. You guys got to work together. And this team is agile. That means the enterprise architects need to step up and become agile, or you need to get out of the way. And but then getting out of the way means now my team is responsible for making sure that we conform to it's not a free pass, right? My team has to now step up and do the enterprise architecture stuff that we need to be up to speed on the enterprise architecture. We need to make sure that we conform to organizational guidance and all that good sort of stuff. So it's not a, congratulations, just go off and do what you want. It's oh, now you got stuck with that work. Too bad for you. That'll teach you to complain. So it'll be one of those things. But you got to overcome this, right? Or it gets back to, here's the enterprise architects throwing an anchor around their neck, and they don't realize the impact of what's going on. And also, be fair, they could be grossly understaffed. They're not doing this for the sheer joy. I suspect they're not getting their chuckles out of making this team miserable. They're doing the best they can, right? So how can we improve that? How can we make things better for everybody involved?
Right. So the key word I took out of that was collaboration. And interesting, I don't know if you're aware of the work of Alistair Coburn and Heart of Agile, but that's right at the top there, right? His first quadrant is collaboration. But then also this idea that the architecture owner then becomes actively engaged in this strategy development at the enterprise level, and so there's a quid pro quo, right, in that high trust relationship there.
Well, yeah, exactly. And so what we're effectively doing in Disciplined Agile is we're saying we still need to work together. We need to work together. And what we're doing is we're replacing the bureaucracy and so whatever the enterprise architects are trying to do now, and forcing you to go through reviews and, whatever else is going on there. We can replace that working together. That it's faster and it's more effective if you choose to. Now, it also means we need to rethink the way that we work together, and we need to experiment. We need to figure it out together as well, because and the challenge for enterprise architects. So let's look at it from their point of view. They've got all these teams that they need to support, and all these teams are working in different ways. So they've got a tough job. And they're probably overwhelmed with the change in technology, the change in the organization, and the change in the business environment. So they got a lot on their plate, and so we need to appreciate that, and we need to have empathy for that. We need to and walk a mile in their shoes for a while, and then because it'll probably be a lot harder than you think. But yeah, I fully believe that they're good, smart people doing the best they can. As that maybe we can help them do better. I think that's what we need to look, and they can help us do better too, right? So you got to figure out how to they need to, if they are overwhelmed, they need to figure out how to offload some of their stuff onto the team.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. So the name of this show is Being Human. So I thought, and it seems to me that we've touched on various times on the human condition in this conversation. So I thought I'd take this in a slightly deeper direction now and ask you, Scott, okay, what does it mean to be human?
Oh, those darn humans. So definitely you don't want to be a Klingon. So so what does it mean to be human? I think let me throw some words there. I think empathy is a having empathy for others and assuming the best. I think because almost and yes, there's the occasional Satan worshiper out there, but everybody else are decent people doing the best they can in the situation that they're in, and I think that's always my assumption, and because it almost always holds true. So that so it's a safe assumption to make. So, and we need to understand that we need to make an effort to try to understand others and where they're coming from, and have a discussion, like share a meal with them, have a go out for a drink if that's good with them, and build bonds, build a relationship with them, and understand what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve, and where they're coming from, and you'll find that they're more than happy to do this agile stuff and to improve and to change and experiment. Just they need to be given an opportunity to. And they're equally frustrated. I'm sure they always have, it's easy to point the finger at others, but it's, I'm sure they're pointing the finger at you too. So this is why we need to have these conversations, and we need to learn from each other. I think that's another thing too. When you work together collaboratively, when you choose to do that, you always learn something, and it's always way more interesting. It's pretty rare that I can run into somebody that I'm not going to learn anything from. It's a weird example, but just the other day, I was working with this team, and we started talking about our kids for some reason, and a couple of them had younger children than my own, and they started talking about this song called Baby Shark, and they warned me. Everybody warned me, don't listen to this song, it's horrible, because it's an earworm. And so sure enough, I went and downloaded it from YouTube, and yes, I shouldn't have listened to that song. But yeah, so I learned that don't listen to Baby Shark. So, but really weird. But how the heck would I have ever learned that if I didn't? I would never have randomly thought to search for a song about baby sharks. So yeah, so it's some weird thing that I learned the hard way. But realistically, I'm always learning about anybody I work with. I'm always learning some new technique, new way of thinking, new application of an existing technique. It's great. So why wouldn't I want to do that? So I think when you're human, you appreciate others, and you yourself should be human. And I think too, there's good things to be said about taking care of yourself, and mind, body, spirit. I think I used to study martial arts, and I hope to, and I every so often I still do Tai Chi, but I hope to get back into it more, particularly with my daughter, who's now talking about finally taking martial arts. So I suspect we'll be doing the daddy-daughter thing soon. I hope. We'll have to see how that works out. But in martial arts, we talk
And what
about
happens when she can start kicking your ass, Scott?
well, yeah, well, that'll be after about a week of training. So, so that'll be good. Yeah, I want her to be able to do that and look after herself. But yeah, in martial arts, we talk about mind, body, and spirit, and you need to take care of all those aspects of your own life and your family and of course your colleagues. And we all need to be working together on that. And if you, I think if you downplay one of those three aspects, then let it wither on the vine, or whatever analogy you want to use. I think as a person, as a human, you suffer from that. So we really do need to look at all aspects of ourselves. You take care of yourself and take care of your family, of course. But I think that's absolutely critical. So yeah, I think being human is definitely important. And I think, and we're all getting there. There's all that. It's interesting as you get older, you start to, there's a saying that, you realize once you're old that your entire life is spent becoming the person you always were meant to be. And sadly, if you had only known that when you're 20, but, all that sort of thing. But yeah, and I think it's, you are becoming the person that you are, that you are. And I think we're all on a journey. And I think that's a fun and interesting thing.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Scott. I really appreciated this conversation. I certainly learned a lot talking about learning, and it's so true. That is, I mean, there are other animals that can learn from each other, but humans do have this unique capacity to learn from each other, and it's something we should.
Yes,
remember.
I think so.
So as I say, I've learned a lot. For people who want to learn more about your work and specifically Disciplined Agile, where best for them to go?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple sites. We're still sort of reworking disciplined-agile.com. But certainly right now, disciplinedagiledelivery.com has a lot of great material on it, and perhaps an overwhelming amount of material on it. But there's a lot of great stuff there, or just do a quick search for me or for Disciplined Agile. And if you get a chance, check out our new book, Choose Your Wow. I think there's a lot of great ideas there for anybody who believes in this message that their teams can learn how to improve and get on this continuous learning journey.
Yeah, and I would totally endorse that, having read the book. And in sort of every aspect you can possibly imagine of delivery and the broader context of the organization you're in, there are sets of options to consider, right? And there's ways to think through the problems with your decision trees. It really is. It's a reference book, right? But it's a very, I can see how powerfully useful it can be as a reference.
Thank you. Yeah, and we get that sort of feedback all the time. We've run into experienced coaches that said, man, I wish I had this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or experienced practitioners that, really had wished they had that a long time ago. And frankly, are still getting value, can still get value from it, even though they are, fairly experienced. So I think there's a huge wealth of information there that you can leverage on your team.
Okay. And we'll put the links to everything you've just mentioned in the description to the episode.
Okay,
Just leaves me to thank you once again for your time.
Yeah,
fantastic
my pleasure.
Conversation.
And everybody should go out and listen to Baby Shark.
We'll put a link to that as well.
Oh, okay. That's horrible. Don't do it. It's horrible.
Okay. All right.
You'll never get the song out of your head. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.